People often say I'm a night owl, and there was actually a really cool study done probably 5 or 10 years ago now where they took these self-proclaimed night owls and they took them out to the mountains, no technology, and they were just hiking and out in nature all day, and within a few days they were all going to bed as after the sun set, and they were waking up with the sun. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Aligned Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Torrie Thompson, and this week we are going to dive into something that affects a lot of people. And if you've ever struggled with this, you know just how torturous it can be. So this week we are diving into sleep and possible root causes of why you may not be falling asleep. There's some really simple things, and then there's some things that may be a little more complex that we can dive in and see if that can be a root cause. But as someone that struggled with insomnia for years, I know all too well what it feels like to not be able to fall asleep, then to fall asleep and wake up, and just the mental torture, the dragging the next day. And so I became very passionate about figuring out how do I get my sleep better. And now we see this with clients all the time, is that tends to be a common symptom. They're not sleeping well. They may be sleeping, but not rested and just not feeling great overall. So I want to get into some root causes, some common mistakes we see people making, and then some simple fixes. So some common root causes that we see that are not so commonly talked about. The first would be parasites. I know it sounds gross and it sounds weird, and you're probably thinking, no, I don't have a parasite. You know, we live here in the US. I don't travel abroad. I don't have parasites. And unfortunately, parasites are far more common than we like to talk about. If you have pets, if you eat vegetables, if you eat raw fish, if you eat pork, there is a likelihood that you could have parasites. Parasites can be these microscopic little guys. It doesn't have to be these giant worms that we associate with, if you've ever seen that show, The Monsters Inside Me, it's not what most parasites are. So parasites, when we get them, they are active at night. So they are a parasite basically means that it is not normal to us and it actually steals our nutrients. So they're going to be most active at night. They release lots of toxins as waste. They can cause the body to release histamine. Histamine is a very excitatory neurotransmitter. And the histamines and the toxic byproduct that these guys release can trigger things like itching. It can trigger restlessness. It can even have grinding of the teeth. They also will munch on your vitamins and minerals. And when we have vitamin mineral deficiencies, we can see things like restless legs, teeth grinding, and that overall restless feeling. So symptoms of parasites, they're not super specific, but it can be waking up from 1 to 3 in the morning. It can be having really bad dreams or vivid dreams. It can be night sweats, restless legs, grinding or clenching your jaw, feeling wired but being tired. And, of course, there can be gut symptoms. So having bloating, weight loss, chronic diarrhea can also be symptoms as well. The tricky part with parasites is there's no perfect way to test for them. So with parasites, we can try to do a stool test. It doesn't mean we're always going to get them in the stool test. So there's not a definitive way to get them 100% of the time, but you can do a stool test and see. You can also look for hints of them in the stool test. You might see secretory IgA elevated. You might see the eosinophils elevated, which can indicate it can mean other things as well. But, you can kind of start to deduce through that. The second thing is mold mycotoxins. So a mycotoxin is a toxin produced by toxic mold. So this is usually water damage mold or mold that is in our food, coffee, grains, and peanuts being the big guys. And mold mycotoxins, or these mold toxins, most of them are neurotoxic. So they're very inflammatory to the brain. So when we have inflammation in the brain, we often see our neurotransmitters get imbalanced. With mold mycotoxins, they really play on the dopamine pathway, dopamine conversion pathway. We can see cortisol elevated. We can see the HPA axis, which is going to regulate your circadian rhythm. We can see that being affected. So they can be very problematic. The problem with mold mycotoxins is if you've been exposed, they don't generally just go away. So they tend to store in the body, and so they can cause these symptoms down the road. Mold can really play with your melatonin production. It can increase glutamate, which is an excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain. It can cause dopamine to stop converting to norepinephrine, so your dopamine builds up. It can cause the gut to be imbalanced and have our serotonin production off. All of these guys can affect our sleep. People often will notice if they're in a water damaged building that their sleep is way worse. That's that high mycotoxin exposure, very, very excitatory, very inflammatory to the brain. If you think you've been exposed to mold, whether it's from water damage or from food sources, what you'll want to do is get a mold mycotoxin test. There's lots of ways to test, but I think the most accurate is urine. The urine tests allow us to see what mycotoxins are floating in the body. There is blood testing, but that just looks at really, have you ever been exposed? It doesn't mean that it's stored in the body. And then you can also look, do you have an allergy? But an allergy, again, doesn't mean that you have these toxins. It just means your immune system doesn't like it. The next root cause of not sleeping well is probably one of the more common ones. And this is blood sugar dysregulation. Often from the time we eat dinner to the time we wake up is a very long window. So what happens is in the middle of the night, your blood sugar will drop, and it will drop can drop very low. And so then the body goes into panic mode. And what it will do is it will increase cortisol and adrenaline to bring your blood sugar back up to a healthy range. What that often feels like is waking up wired at 2, 3, 4 a.m., whatever time the blood sugar drop is. We often see people waking up. And the way you can track that is wear a continuous glucose monitor. When you wear a continuous glucose monitor, we can see what your blood sugar is doing in real time. So you can see, is it dropping around the time you're waking up? Often people are having these high and low blood sugar spikes and crashes when your blood sugar and your metabolic hormones are out of balance. And so what we need to do is figure out, how do we balance that? And I've done a whole podcast on blood sugar and blood sugar regulation and all of that, but we really need to, have a diet high in protein, high in fats. Don't have carbs alone. You want to pair them with fats and proteins and really get your blood sugar stable. You can use supplements along the way, but really giving your body the fuel it needs so that it can basically bring those steep rise and falls to more like rolling hills. The other thing is, if you are noticing that, you might need to do a high protein or high fat snack before bed. So almond butter, a little bit of turkey, something to give your body a little extra fuel to make it, and then eat first thing in the morning. Don't wait an hour, 2, 3 hours. We want to make sure that you've got fuel in your system pretty close to waking. The next one, and one that people often think about when they're waking up in the middle of the night, especially women, is hormone imbalances. And as we get older and our hormones start to lower, we start to see sometimes our sleep is affected. And so when we're looking at hormones, we've got a few of them that come to mind. People always think just sex hormones, but hormones are far more than that. We've got, of course, our sex hormones. You've got cortisol, you've got your thyroid, you've got metabolic hormones. All of these guys are hormones. When we're looking at sex hormones, our progesterone, we know this guy is the calming hormone. And so when we see women in perimenopause and menopause, these levels get low. When our levels fall in menopause and perimenopause, this will also reduce our GABA activity, or neurotransmitter. And so that can make it harder to relax. And then we've got our estrogen pathway. And often we are stuck in estrogen dominance when we have either poor estrogen metabolism through the liver or a high toxic load of these xenoestrogens. We tend to be estrogen dominant, and that will throw off the progesterone's calming effect and actually can heighten anxiety at night. And so in a lot of menopausal women with our hormone shifts, we'll start to see night sweats, we'll start to see anxiety, restlessness at night. So that's when it can be helpful to look at hormones. I like to pair a hormone with a toxin panel to see, do you have toxins in your body that are affecting your hormones? And when we have that, removing the toxins is an important step, because it's very hard for your hormones to be in balance when there are toxins that are throwing that off. The next hormone is cortisol. So cortisol is our stress hormone, and often we are living our lives go, 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 and so our cortisol can be high. And if your cortisol is high, it's going to feel like you are wired. It's going to feel like you're, restless, and you're not going to wind down well. And so when we see cortisol high, people often describe this as being tired but wired. They're tired, but their body's on edge. The other thing with high cortisol is cortisol can also pair with your blood sugar. So they're very much interconnected. And so if your blood sugar is low, your cortisol is going to jump up. So then you can feel that wired feeling as your body tries to balance out its low blood sugar. Then we've got our thyroid hormones. And so the thyroid hormones are responsible for our metabolism. And if our thyroid is low output, which is far more common than over functioning thyroid, it can definitely slow our metabolism, and it can make our sleep less restorative. It can make you feel like you've slept, but you're exhausted. And so that is something to look at, especially if you're someone that struggled with thyroid imbalances. Sometimes you need to go and, have your medicine adjusted. Getting your thyroid levels checked regularly is crucial, even when on medication, just to make sure that you're on the right dosage for where your thyroid is at. The next root cause is, how is your liver? What is your liver doing? So the liver is going to be most active and doing its jobs from 1 to 3 in the morning. If you're looking at Chinese medicine, that is liver time. And so often when our livers are overburdened, and for most of us, just the world we live in is a very hard environment for the liver. We are exposed to toxins on a day-to-day basis. So our body is having to break those down. Our hormones have to be metabolized. Alcohol, all of the things we put in our body that the body perceives as a toxin all have to be metabolized by the liver. So when the liver is overburdened with all these toxins, it can cause us to wake up in the middle of the night. So the thing to do is look at your liver markers in your blood work. Your doctor likely runs these every year, and it would be AST and ALT. See, are those elevated? And that would give you an inclination if your liver is stressed. And if so, then diving into why. Is it toxins? Is it stress? Is it hormone imbalances? What is the cause of the liver overload? So let's look at a few mistakes that people make at bedtime or as they're winding down. A lot of people think you just crawl into bed and go to sleep, and some people are lucky enough that they can just do that. But some of the common mistakes that we see people making is caffeine too late in the day. The caffeine half-life is several hours. And so even if you feel that you're immune to coffee, it may be affecting you more than you think. And so I would say I don't ever have caffeine after 11 a.m., but try to cut back on your caffeine, especially in the afternoon, just if that is a possible culprit for you. Some people don't realize that they actually are slow metabolizers of caffeine, and that's really not helping them fall asleep. The next thing is blue light, and this is the one no one wants to hear. Blue light is put out by all of our electronics, even our lights. And so the problem with blue light is it will actually shut down our melatonin production. Melatonin is the hormone that is going to tell us it's time to start to wind down and go to sleep. So if you have blue light, it's basically telling your brain that it's daytime because you have blue light outside in the sun, which is normal blue light. But as we are looking at our phones, our iPads, our TV screens at night, you're still getting blue light in your eyes. And so your body's like, oh, it's daytime. We don't need to go to sleep. And so as you should be getting a rise in melatonin to tell your body it's time to wind down and go to bed, we're not. So there's a few ways around this. The hardest would be no electronics 2 hours around bedtime. The way you can kind of side skirt this is you can get blue light blockers and wear them if you're going to be on your phone or watching TV. And they're these orange sunglasses that you'll wear. You do look like a little bit of a rock star, but wear your orange sunglasses, and that will help cut the blue light down in your eyes so that you aren't having that delayed release of melatonin. And then the other thing that we see is not addressing the nervous system. Many of our bodies are trained to be go, go, go. We pack a million things in our day. We live crazy schedules. Our stress baseline is very high. And so when we try to go to bed, our body is still in this fight or flight, high stress response state. And people always think fight or flight is something bad has to happen, or there has to be something dramatic. But unfortunately, we can live there just based off of our day-to-day lives being very, very stressed. And so if you're not doing anything to kind of wind down and get your body to relax, it can keep you from getting really good restful sleep. And so whether it's breath work, whether it's just reading before bed or journaling or having quiet time or whatever relaxes you, that can be extremely hard on our body if we don't do that. So that we, if you do add that in, it can help you just kind of wind down and be able to go to sleep. So something, I wear an Oura Ring. There's a million sleep trackers out there. And so people think, should I wear them? Should I not? And so I am a fan of a sleep tracker. I am a fan of sleep trackers. I think they're very helpful. They can help women track their cycles. They can help you track your HRV, your sleep, your exercise. They can be very, very helpful. But I will say one of the tricky parts is some people do let them dictate their day. So if you wake up and your Oura says that you got a 94 sleep score, they'll have a great day. And if it says it got a 64 sleep score, they don't. So you can't let the data dictate your day. You really do need to go off of how you feel. But in my eyes, I look at it and I can really track, how did this exercise affect my sleep? Or how did this food or this timing of eating, how did it affect my sleep? How did these supplements affect it? And so you can wear that and it can give you insight too. You'll see, did you wake up? Were you moving around? Was there oxygen levels detected as being off? Because sleep apnea is a huge thing for people that is often undiagnosed as well. So some practical tips. Number one, balance your blood sugar. So eat a balanced dinner. You want protein and fats as your main food groups. Of course, you can have carbs in there, but you do want to make sure that you have plenty of fats and plenty of protein to balance out the carbs. Wear a CGM, see how your blood sugar is doing overnight. And if it's dropping, have a snack before bed as you work on balancing your blood sugar. The other thing is getting your body back in sync with the circadian cycles and circadian rhythms. People often say, I'm a night owl. And there was actually a really cool study done probably 5 or 10 years ago now, where they took these self-proclaimed night owls and they took them out to the mountains, no technology, and they were just hiking and out in nature all day. And within a few days, they were all going to bed after the sun set, and they were waking up with the sun. And so often we train ourselves that we're staying up late and we sleep in because we're on our phones or working or whatever it may be. So getting your body back in sync with the sun to the best of your ability is helpful. So when you wake up, go outside and get some sunlight, and try to get outside at nighttime too, especially go on a walk as the sun's setting. Allow your body to see the sunrise and sunset. Really can help balance your circadian rhythm. Adding a nervous system support, so breath work before bed. I do it before bed and when I wake up. Journaling, especially if you're a ruminator, journaling thoughts so you can write it down, or writing a to-do list for the next day so you don't have to sit and think on it. And then doing some vagus nerve support. So you can hum. Gargling water is helpful after you brush your teeth. And that will help the vagus nerve, which is the huge nerve that runs from our brain down and is really responsible for the sympathetic response. Some environmental hacks: sleep cold. I sleep with my house at 66, 67 degrees, but keep the room 65 to 68 ideally. If you don't want to run your house that cold, you can get something like an 8 Sleep, and that is a mattress topper that will actually keep your bed cold. So keep it cold. The colder, the better. Have blackout curtains. Lights will disrupt your sleep, so have blackout curtains and nothing with light shining in there. You should always really not be able to see your hand in front of your face when the lights are out. And then keep electronics away from your bed. You don't want that EMF exposure right by you, so put your phone away. One, it makes it easier where you're not tempted to use it if you can't sleep, but two, then you're not getting the EMFs. Then, of course, there is the supplement support. So magnesium is one of my favorite supplements for helping sleep. Magnesium glycinate is best for overall body relaxation. Magnesium threonate is going to be a little more mind relaxation. You've got glycine, which is going to help the nervous system calm. It's going to help the liver detox. So really, if you're someone that is struggling with sleep, I encourage you to try to figure out why. getting good sleep is so crucial to being healthy. That's when our body does its jobs. It's when it detoxes, when it cleans, when it heals, when it makes new cells. It's so imperative to be able to get good sleep. You will feel incredible when you start getting good sleep. Your energy goes up. It's a noticeable difference. So I encourage you to dive into some root causes. There's a lot of different things that could be causing sleep imbalances. We just scratched the surface on this time, but I encourage you to dive in and figure out why it could be, and then maybe do some testing or do some things to start to balance. But getting good sleep is truly one of the foundations of being healthy. So thank you, and I will see you guys all next week.